Good day, class. Today, let us begin our lesson on leadership approaches. Leadership is both a process and a property. It is a process because it involves the use of non-coercive influence. It is a property because it is the set of characteristics attributed to someone who is perceived to use influence successfully. Leadership requires a lot of influence. Influence is the ability to affect perception, belief, attitude, motivation, and behavior of others. The following are the distinctions between management and leadership, according to John Cotter. In creating an agenda, management is planning and budgeting, establishing detailed steps and timetables for achieving needed results, allocating the resources necessary to make those needed results happen. In leadership, it is establishing direction, developing a vision of the future, often the distant future, and strategies for producing the changes needed to achieve that vision. In developing a human network for achieving the agenda, management is organizing and staffing, establishing substructure for accomplishing plan requirements, staffing that structure with individuals, delegating responsibility and authority, providing policies and procedures, and creating methods or systems to monitor implementation. For leadership, it is aligning people, communicating the direction by words and deeds to all those whose cooperation may be needed to influence the creation of teams and coalitions that understand the vision and strategies and accept the validity. Under executing plans, management is controlling and problem solving, monitoring results versus plan in some detail, identifying deviations, and then planning and organizing to solve these problems. Under leadership, it is motivating and inspiring, energizing people to overcome major political, bureaucratic, and resource barriers to change by satisfying very basic but unfulfilled human needs. Under outcomes, management is producing a degree of predictability and order and has the potential to consistently produce major results expected by various stakeholders. Leadership is producing change, often to a dramatic degree, and it has the potential to produce extremely useful changes. The earliest approaches to leadership is the trait approach and the behavioral approach. The trait approach refers to leadership as a set of identifiable qualities a leader will possess. It attempts to identify stable and enduring character traits that differentiate effective leaders from non-leaders. It focuses on leadership traits, developing methods for measuring leadership traits, using methods to identify and select leaders. Currently accepted limited set of leadership traits are emotional intelligence, drive, motivation, honesty and integrity, self-confidence, cognitive ability, knowledge of the business, and charisma. So the trait theory tells us that a leader must possess most, if not all, of these good qualities. The behavioral approach presents the leader as having certain tendencies. The tendency to be job-centered and the tendency to be employee-centered. A job-centered leader behavior involves paying close attention to the work of subordinates, explaining work procedures, and demonstrating a strong interest in performance, while an employee-centered leader behavior involves attempting to build effective work groups with high-performance goals. Two of the first behavioral approaches to leadership were the Michigan and Ohio State studies. The results of the Michigan studies suggested that there are two fundamental types of leader behavior, job-centered and employee-centered, which were presumed to be at opposite ends of a single continuum. The study defined job-centered and employee-centered leadership as opposite ends of a single leadership dimension. The Ohio State studies found two kinds of leadership behavior, consideration and initiating structure. These behaviors are somewhat parallel to those found in the Michigan studies, but this research suggested that these two types of behavior were actually independent dimensions. It places consideration for behavior and consideration on structure behavior on two different ends of the continuums. Consideration for behavior involves being concerned for subordinates' feelings and respecting subordinates' ideas. Initiating structure behavior involves clearly defining leader-subordinate roles so that subordinates know what is expected of them. The leadership grid, originally called managerial grid, provides a means for evaluating leadership styles and then training managers to move toward an ideal style of behavior. It has two axes. The horizontal axis represents concern for production. The vertical axis represents concern for people. The 5 management styles are identified on the grid. The leadership grid is a method of evaluating leadership styles. The overall objective of an organization using the grid is to train its managers using organizational developmental techniques so that they are simultaneously more concerned for both people and production. That is 9-9 style on the grid. The 9-9 quadrant represents the team management leadership style, wherein the leader has high concern for production and high concern for people. Quadrant 1-9 is the country club management style, wherein the manager has low concern for production and high concern for people. Quadrant 1-1 is impoverished management, wherein the manager has low interest in production and low concern for people also. Quadrant 9-1 is authority compliance, where the manager has high concern for production but low concern for people. In the middle of the grid is coordinates 5-5, representing the middle of the road manager. The manager has adequate concern for production and adequate concern for people. Another approach to leadership are situational models or situational theories. This approach assumes that appropriate leader behavior varies from one situation to another. It seeks to identify how key situational factors interact to determine appropriate leader behavior. Under the situational approach, there is the leadership continuum, least preferred coworker theory, path goal theory, and Vroom's decision tree. The leadership continuum model was developed by Robert Tannenbaum and Warren Schmidt, and it laid the foundation for research in the situational approach. The Tannenbaum and Schmidt leadership continuum was an important precursor to modern situational approach to leadership. The continuum identifies 7 levels of leadership, which range between the extremes of boss-centered and subordinate-centered leadership. The blue field refers to a subordinate-centered leadership. As you move from left to right of the blue field, the degree of subordinate-centered leadership will increase. The 7 levels below describes the changes in the manager's leadership style when you increase the area of freedom of subordinates. The pink field refers to a boss-centered leadership. As you move from right to left of the field, the degree of the use of authority by the manager will increase. The 7 levels below describes the changes in the manager's leadership style when you increase the area of use of authority by the manager. That ends today's lesson. Thank you for listening. Have a nice day, and God bless.